Welcome back everyone to another Warframe video. This is a little bit of a follow-up to the previous video I made, and I just wanted to say before we get into it, thank you to all of those of you who did have some sort of reply or comment, even if you didn't agree with me. A lot of it was very interesting to read, and a lot of you had some very interesting things to say about it. And I wanted to go through some of those comments and kind of give more of a detailed explanation as to why I feel this way about Lethal Torrent in general and secondaries as a whole. Elaborate a bit further on certain things that I think would be better or would be worse, and some of the comments that I've had really made me think a little harder about it. Without further ado, let's get into it. So first comment we're going to get into comes from this one right here. The mod is needed for weapons that need a fire rate, as Vigilante Armaments is needed for primaries that need to crit. And DE wouldn't change the fire rate bonus to be extra crit like primary because secondaries already have 2 prime crit mods. I personally think the bonus should be somehow percentage of ammo efficiency. Now I get that a lot of the way DE does things, like certain classes of weapons might have certain bonuses or certain advantages over others, and I think this is a really interesting idea and a good thought, but I also think that the problem still lies with the fact that there's still a huge discrepancy between how certain weapons function, and those advantages and disadvantages comes down to such an unnecessary need for choking out the amount of mods you can put on a weapon. Again, it comes down to just the sheer amount of things you need to make secondaries good versus primaries such as shotguns, rifles, bows, pretty much any one of those. As for the proposed idea of ammo efficiency, I think that would be really good. I think a good idea for Lethal Torrent, like I said before, was to make it more utility based, and that would follow that trend, but I feel like if it was going to have ammo efficiency of some kind, it would need something else to incentivize you to put it on the weapon, and maybe have Lethal Torrent be some kind of Exilis if that is the case. Next comment we're going to go over is this one right here, and it reads, leave a Lethal Torrent alone. Even if they have a tight build, no secondaries are supposed to be a backup to your primaries or whatever. Some can hold their ground because imbalance is a thing. Just play the game like everyone else and have fun. Okay, this one I feel is really dismissive of any sort of issue or claim that I have, and I would like to pick this one apart a little bit. I don't really want to be mean about how I bring this up, but I'm gonna be as blatant and kind of blunt as I can. This isn't Call of Duty. This is not Battlefield. This isn't Aliens Fireteam Elite. Secondaries by themselves do not function the same way they do in other games. This is a power fantasy. And claiming that they are seriously and only a fallback to your primary weapons is simply false. Never in this game's history have I ever heard anyone say that secondaries are only things you use as a fallback, the primary weapons you have. They can hold their own in so many ways, and there's imbalance. This person is absolutely correct. There is a huge imbalance with weapons. That is no big secret. That is nothing new. What I don't understand is why that suddenly completely negates the valid complaint, in my eyes, that secondaries do have a lot of issues compared to other weapon classes. And just telling me to play the game and have fun like everyone else, I mean, dude, I've been playing this game for a really long time. I don't think it's fair to tell me to just play the game and have fun. Like, I'm not allowed to have some sort of issue with the game, whether it be minor or major, and still have fun with the game. Just dismissing me and telling me to just have fun and accept the fact that there's an issue with the game and ignore it just is not fair. Anyway, moving on. Next comment reads, while removing sounds like it's a little too harsh, this mod sadly suffers from Warframe modding system of being either used for a meme build or it's entirely necessary, or just because you want to use it. Maybe pumping a few numbers would make it better, but I believe them is an okay spot for a mod. Now this person is absolutely correct on the whole. There's a huge discrepancy between mods that are absolutely necessary and mods that are seriously just memes or just for making one thing better about your gun. But that was the whole complaint I had, is there's far too many things you need to put on the weapon before you can really start to diversify with what the weapon can do. Now, he has an interesting point here with maybe changing some numbers around so it takes less capacity, but that doesn't really fix the problem. The problem is the actual mod slots, not the capacity that they have. And pumping a few numbers, maybe he meant more along the lines of making Lethal Torrent more or less valuable to have, or some area more or less valuable, so there is a little bit more diversity. But I still think the problem lies with all of these mods are crucial to make a weapon good. And by the time you have filled out all the mods to make weapon work for Steel Path or anything higher, God forbid you go an hour or more into a Steel Path, yes, these things work, but every build ends up being a cookie cutter copy regardless of the weapon. In most cases, there are a few outliers, I'm not going to discount that, but overall you're going to end up running into the same problem. Same builds on pretty much every weapon. Next comment reads, don't know why everyone is disagreeing. Lethal Torrent was one of the best mods for secondaries, no debate. No matter if you're going for damage or making a condition overload proc build, it is going to be effective. Without Lethal Torrent, you're effectively doing less damage. Again, absolutely correct statement. And this is where it comes back to my last video where I talked about other weapons. Yes, while specifically primaries have another way to get multi-shot, the fact remains that in order to get the same or similar amount of multi-shot as the other classes of weapons, you're forced into using Lethal Torrent, and not having it is just a straight up downgrade. There's not any reason to go with anything over Lethal Torrent because it's just such a good mod, and this is why I have such an issue with it. It's a requirement just like every other damage mod in the game, but it takes up an extra slot, and I don't think that needs to be the case. Next mod reads, this is a pretty bad take, honestly. That's fair. You're completely entitled to your own decision, and I'm glad people are being honest with this and being nice about it. The idea itself is pretty good, but I don't know why you chose this specific mod. Pretty sure DE discussed this during a stream years ago about how they were thinking of taking away mandatory mods and just buffing the guns themselves. All mandatory mods should be gone, not just one good mod. I 100% agree. Again, this is something I wholeheartedly agree with. The problem is, and I'm gonna repeat this line right here, DE discussed this during a stream years ago. That's the key phrase right there. Years ago. How many times have we seen DE talk about something and then sweep it under the rug, or reveal something and then quietly push it away and not address it or talk about it? The reason I'm so laser focused on one mod is because secondaries are by far one of the most shafted in a lot of ways, where it just has a lot less space than anything else in the game. And they're absolutely right that everything else should go, but I don't think that's going to happen. DE has had a huge habit of doing this kind of stuff in the past, and all mandatory mods should go. But again, DE's not going to do that. I sincerely doubt that they are going to have a massive reveal, because when they talk about things like this, these big changes, they're usually really vocal about it. Anytime there's any sort of nerf, buff, tweak, update, or some modification to the game, they're usually pretty vocal about it. Take the AoE changes, for example. They told us way ahead of time that this is going to need change. They even showed charts on why it needs to change. Back when they did the rework for enemy scaling, they were very vocal about it for quite a while before it actually came into the game. They talked about damage changes and mods being removed years ago, and we have heard practically nothing since then. This is just not gonna happen kind of thing. It's just not gonna happen. And that's why I'm so focused. I would rather them focus on alleviating the issue for weapons that really need it, or classes of weapons that really need it, than trying to completely overhaul the entire system, because that is a massive undertaking. What I'm suggesting is a small change. And this leads us into our next comment. This comment reads, I'm not sure if I agree with Lethal Torrent being a passive boost to every secondary in the game. I'm a fan of Serration, Hornet Strike, Point Blank being added to all weapons as a part of their growth from rank 0 to 30. I remember when they talked about this possibility ages ago. I guess they opted out, and that would be my guess too, is they probably opted out of that idea because of it would be a massive undertaking with just how many weapons are in the game. Pure damage mods are necessary on 80-90% of the weapons in the game, especially new players that don't have access to Rivens or Banes. It should be a part of the weapon's innate growth of a weapon, just like our Warframes have growth as they level up. That way we can have flat damage boosts at max rank and not waste a mod slot. As for Lethal Torrent, I think the mod has plenty of value just based on the fire rate boost alone. Perhaps they could increase the multi-shot chance, but the mod has value beyond raw DPS. This seems to be a common trend with a lot of these, where I agree with what they're saying about it should be built into the weapon. I'm not debating that. The one line I want to focus on at the moment is people say it has plenty of value as is. I'm not debating that it doesn't have value. It absolutely has value. My argument is that it does not need to be separate from another mod or as a part of the weapon. This person also brings up the fact that DE talked a long time ago about how they might get rid of mods to further expand on what you can put in. And I replied to this comment. I said something along the lines of, this is more of what I meant when I talked about in my previous video. I should have elaborated further on what I mean by a blanket passive bonus. I'm not talking every weapon should just out of the gate innately have this. I think it should do exactly what this person says. It should always just level up with the weapon, getting progressively better as the weapon does, without needing the mod slot for it. I think they would be a lot more willing to do something like that because it's not such a massive undertaking, especially when you consider that, again, secondaries are so heavily restricted on what they can and can't use to be viable. A lot of the high tier weapons can get away with going without one or two things because of power creep. To be honest, that's something that's going to be in the game. Overall, I would say my stance on this has not changed. It's very important to me that they take small steps in the right direction. This is the last big reason why I don't think they're ever going to do that. Why I don't think that they're ever going to do that is because they've already doubled down on potency of mods and like putting things, especially things like galvanized mods, them putting those in the game tells me they're not going to do that. Them doubling down and giving us more things, better versions of the mods that they talked about taking out all those years ago, does not tell me that they're going to do that. But that's just one man's take on it. Tell me what you think in the comments if you agree or disagree. I really like reading the comments, and I'm glad that people are willing to give me their 2 cents on the topic. Whether or not you agree, perfectly fine. I will see you guys in the next video.